What's up, guys? My name is Esteban, and today we're going to be building a chat application. We're going to be using React Native, Firebase, Firestore, and we're also going to use Expo. And we're going to keep it simple. We're not going to have authentication, but you would be able to understand how we can manage Firestore data and how to listen to real-time updates. And I hope you find this helpful. So let me show you what we have here. So the initial screen is going to have is going to ask you for your name, and I can type my name here, and then I can enter the chat. So we have this UI, we don't have any message yet, and I can have this different device, and I can add a different user, and we can start chatting. So you can see that the message is being listened here, and we have the initials of the name. We also have the date. We also have the details of the date. Hi, how are you? And we should be able to see this message here. And we have this nice UI that has all these features and has a ton more features because we're using the library called React Native Gifted Chat. That's an amazing library that has a ton of features, and I will link that in the description so you can take a look at what's available. So now that I show you the app, let's start. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install the Expo CLI in our computer. So you need to have Node.js before trying to make this, so make sure that you have that. And the thing that you need to do is just npm install expo CLI, and we are going to add the global flag. So that's going to install the Expo CLI globally in your computer. I'm not going to do that because I already have that installed. And after that, we're going to run the expo init command, and we are going to give it a name. So I can say React Native Chat. Okay. So that's going to be the name of the project. We have then this to choose these options. So we can use the managed workflow or the workflow. We're just going to stick with the managed workflow. And here we are going to start with a blank template, so without TypeScript. So we hit enter, and now it's going to install all the dependencies. In my case, it's going to use Yarn because I have Yarn in my system, but if you have npm, it's going to use npm to install all the dependencies. It can take a little bit, so I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's done. Okay, now that it's done, we are going to cd into that project. So, and now we are going to install the dependencies that we need for this project. So it's really important that you use the Expo CLI to install the dependencies, because it's going to make sure that install the compatible versions of the packages compatible with Expo. So Expo has this install command that's going to use yarn on npm to install dependencies, but it's going to make sure that are the correct ones. So the dependencies that we need is we need Firebase. We also need the React Native Gifted Chat library. So that's the library that's going to give us that nice UI. And we are also going to install a sync storage. So this is from the React Native community package, and this is for storing the user data locally. So that's the package that we're going to install for now, and I will come back when it's done. Okay, now that the packages are installed, we're going to run the project in development. So for doing that, we just need to run the expo start command, and that's going to open a new development server, and it's going to add a new browser window in this port. So if you open your browser, you should be able to see something like this. And the easiest way to open this in a device, in a phone, is to use the Expo client. So the Expo client is an application that you can install in your phone. So there are versions for Android and iOS. So you just can go to the Play Store and search for Expo, or the App Store, and you will have this application. And the way it works is that for Android, you will need to scan this QR code, and it should launch your application. And for iOS, you need to create an account, and after that, you can log into that account, and you need to publish the package to Expo, and then you can access the application. It's a little bit more complicated, but well, you just need to create an account in Expo.io for iOS. But for Android, you can just install the client and you should be able to go. Another way is to use emulators. So if you have Android Studio in your computer, you have a bunch of devices there, you can just click here and it will launch the project in your emulator. Or if you are in a Mac, you can also run this in an iOS simulator. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I just opened the emulator and I just click it here, and now it's building all the packages, and we should be able to see the initial app that we have from the Expo template. And there you have it. We just have this simple app that it just has this text. So now let's go back to the terminal, and well, I will close this here for now, and I can open the project with VS Code. I will open the project with VS Code, and I will run again Expo start here. Now we're going to set up Firebase. So for doing that, we're going to go to console.firebase.google.com, and there you're going to click to create a new project. So give it the name that you want, and I'm not going to enable analytics, and it should take a minute to create that project. And there you can create a new application. So you might think that you will need to add iOS or Android, but actually the way it works is that we use the web SDK for when using Expo, and you can give it the name of, I don't know, app, and after that we have an object that we can use to start the application. So now let's go back to our app.js, and here we have some boilerplate from React Native. And this is what we are going to do. We are going to import Firebase, everything as Firebase from Firebase. And we are also going to import Firebase slash Firestore. So because we're going to use Firestore, so we need those things, and here we can just copy this configuration and we can just paste it here. So I'm going to change this to a const declaration, and then we can save. So one thing here before starting is that because because in development we have hot reload. This is going to be every time we save is going to try to create the app that's already there. So we're going to add this if clause, and we're going to say that if we have if Firebase that apps that length is equals to 0, then we are going to initialize the app. So this is only because when we are in development, we have this fast reloading feature, and it's going to try to create the app every time we save, and we don't want to do that. We only want to create that once. And because of that, we also need to add another comment here. So this is from the Expo documentation, and because we are going to listen to every time to the database, and at when we mount the components. So by default, what the live reloading does is that it persists your React state, and we want to prevent that. So everyone we save, we want to wipe the React state of the component. So for doing that, we just need to add this refresh state, and this will tell Expo that we don't want to refresh all the. We want to wipe the state every time we initialize the app. One last thing that we need to set up in Firebase console is that we need to create a new database, and we are going to use the test mode because we're not using authentication, so everyone can access. If you want to set up authentication, you can start with this one, but we're going to use this one for now. And then you can choose the location, and it will create the database. One last disclaimer is that, well, for doing this, you can use Firestore, or you can also use the real-time database from Firebase. But Firestore is the one that has the most features and is the recommended way of storing data in Firebase. But there's a small issue that right now we have like this really annoying warning this only happens in Android, and it's because of how the timers work there. And currently there is no solution for that, and it's not a breaking thing that's going to break your app or anything, but it's kind of annoying. So we're going to ignore that thing using this yellow box component from React Native, and we can add the following here. So we are going to just ignore this warning, and the warning that we don't want to see is this one. We have to pass an array with the string of the warning, and this is this one about the timers. Okay, now that we have that, let's start with the application. So we're going to start with the user. We are not actually going to have authentication, but we do need to have a user, and the user is going to be persisted in the local storage. And for doing that, we are going to use state from React, and we are going to initialize the user state, and it's going to be const equals use state. The initial value will be null, so we don't have a user at the beginning. And then we are going to have a user and a set user function here. After that, we are going to we're going to use the use effect hook. So the use effect is for doing things at the initial when we first render this component. And what we are going to do is we're going to let me set up this hook use effect like this with the callback. And because it's the initial call, we are not going to pass any dependency list here, because it's going to run only in the beginning. And what we are going to do here, we are going to have a function that's going to be called read user. And this function, what's going to do is just, it's going to look in the async storage that we have. Is we are going to see if we have a user. So now let's import async storage from the package that we installed. Okay, let's import async storage from React Native async storage. And now what we can do here is we can say the following. So we can say const user equals, and we are going to await. We are using an async function, and we are going to await for async storage that get item, and the item that we need is going to be called, have the key of user. And if we don't have the item, this is going to return null. So if we have a user, and this user is going to be a JSON string, so we need to parse that string, but we are going to say set user is equal to, when we are going to pass JSON that parse, and we need to parse that JSON object string. And what's the logic is going, well, let's say here we have an user, but if we don't have a user, we are going to add this logic here, and we are going to return, and here we are going to have the initial form that we see in the demo. So what we need here is we need to grab this in a view, and this view is going to have an style. So for now we're going to say style is going to equal styles that container, and the container is going to have these properties that we already have with the layout, but it's also going to have a padding of 30. So we don't see nothing yet, but we're going to add more things here. So what we also need is we need a text input. So I don't know if you remember, we have a text input here. So let's see if we don't have that. And we're going to import the text input from React Native, and we also need a button. So that's what we need from React Native. And now let's start with the text input. It's going to have a style, and we are going to define that style here. So we can say input, and the style is going to be that is going to have a height of 50, is going to have a width of 100% of the screen, and it's going also to have a border width of 1, a padding of 50, and a border color of gray. So that's our input. And now let's pass that styles here, and we should be able to see the input. So we have the input there, and we also are going to add a placeholder that says enter your name. So we have the placeholder, and now we need to bind the value of this input to the state. So we declare that state here, and what we now need to do is say that, where is that? Here, that the value equals the well, we have the state for the user, but we're also going to have a state for the name. So I'm just going to copy this, and this is going to have an initial value. We're going to add the set name function, and it's going to have the initial value of an empty array, and this is what we're going to pass here. So the value is going to be the name, and once we are going to listen to the onText input. We are going to pass the set name function here. So this is our how we are defining our text input, and now we need to add the button. So I'm going to add the button here, and this button is going to have a title of enter the chat. So this is the button. Right now it doesn't do anything, and now I'm also going to add some padding to some margin to this input. So it's going to have margin bottom of 20. So it's a little bit separated, and we need to have a handler. So the handler is going to be on press, and we are going to have this handle press function that we are going to define here. And this is also going to be an async function that's called handle press. And what this function is going to do is going to set the state of the user. So the state of the user is going to be an object that has an ID, and we are going to give it this name, and this is because this is how it is handled in the React Native gifted chat library. And for now it's going to be a really dumb random string, but if you have authentication in your application, this will be probably will be the ID of your user, or maybe you want to have a different type of random string, but this is going to use just the native APIs from JavaScript, and this is how we can generate a random string. So this is going to be a random string that's going to be for our current user, and then we can say that our user equals this ID is an object that has the ID property that we defined here, and it's also going to have the name. So the name that we have here is going to be here, and after that what we are going to do is we're going to await to async storage that set item, and here is where we are going to persist the user into the async storage, and we need to create a string of that object because that's how we store things in async storage. We need to pass them as a string, and then we can change the user to the current value. So there we have it. We have the I think we have everything here. So now if I type here, so here we have an issue here. So okay, I see the problem. So this is not the event that we want to react. The event that we need to listen is on change text. So this is the event that we need to listen, and now if it is working. So we enter our name, and now we should be able to see this, because now we now have the user in our local storage. So if I refresh this, we should still have this in our application because it's persisted. Okay, now that we have that, let's move on to Firestore and Firebase. Okay, so how we achieve this to listen to real-time updates is that we need to attach a subscription in our use effect function. So that's how we can listen to real-time changes and changes in the first time. And the way we do this with Firebase is we first need to create a reference to the document that we are going to access. So let me do that, and I'm going to declare a new variable called db, and this db variable is going to be Firebase.Firestore function. So that's how it's just to access this quickly. And now we need the reference to the chat collection. So the chat collection does not exist, but it does not need to be created. We can reference that collection even though it doesn't exist. So we can say chats ref, and here we are going to say db.collection. So that's how we make the reference. And well, the name of the collection is going to be chats. So we are just creating the reference, and now we need to interact with that reference. And we are going to declare a new variable that's going to be called on subscribe. And the reason for this is because we want to, when we leave this component, we want to call this function so we don't have this listening all the time. And what we need to do now is use our chats reference, and this has an on snapshot method. So this method is going to be called every time we have a new update in our collection. And we can do it by document also, but we are going to do it by a collection. So as a response, we have, for every time the data changes, we have a query snapshot the data. And what we are going to do with this data, with this object, I think it's an object, we are going to react to the changes of the data, of course. So we're going to create a new variable that's called message Firestore, and this is we're going to use the query snapshot. So this is going to have all the data that's changing. So there's two ways of doing this. You can just listen to the data directly using the docs property, or using a for each loop for every data that we have. But this is going to pick all the data. So if we append a new message, it's going to have all the previous message, and we don't maybe we don't want to do that, because if we do that in that way, we're going to have a bigger object every time, and we're also going to have to re-render the components all the time, the components of the chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to just listen to the doc changes, and we can and this is going to gives an object that's going to have what type of change we have. So we're going to filter in that doc changes object, and what we're going to filter is here we still have the doc changes. What we're going to filter is we have this type property, and what we want is only the type when it equals the type added. So this is a type of change. So we have different types of changes here. So you can see that we have modified, we also have removed, but the one that we want to listen is the when we have a new document in the collection, and the reason is, well, messages that are not going to be deleted or modified, they're going only to be added. So that's what we want to filter. And let me break this in another line, and we are going to map those changes, because we need to change the data in a way that we want. So we're going to access here. What we're going to access is the doc. So we have the doc property inside the changes, the doc changes, and this is the actual data, that the real messages. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to declare a new variable that's going to be called message. So these are the individual messages that we have, and the message is going to be our doc.data. So this is a method that we have inside these doc objects, and this is going to give us the data. And here what we are going to return, and this is going to be the actual shape of the message. So I'm going to explain you in a bit. And the shape, we are going to spread all the properties of the message. So we will have this object will have an ID, will have a text, that's going to be the text of the message. Is going to also have a created add property, and is also going to have a user. So every message has a sub collection, a sub map that has the user, and we're going to spread all those properties, but the one that we want to modify is the created add. And the reason is that if we are going to save with the date object, what Firebase is going to do is going to create a new timestamp object from Firestore that has some methods, and we need to transform that object. So we are going to change that property. We are going to say message that created add, and this new instance of that class has a method that's called toDate. So this is going to transform this message created add property to a data JavaScript object. And the reason is because at the beginning this is a different kind of object that we cannot use in the library that we are using. So once we change the data of how we want it, then we're going to sort that data, and we're going to sort so it shows from beginning to end in the order in the correct order. So Right now we cannot see anything, but hopefully in a minute you're going to see what we are doing here. So we are going to sort that data, and the sort array method has two parameters. So the two items of the array that are going to be compared, and here we need to return an operation. So the operation is going to be the b that created at. So this is the property that we have here. And because now this is a JavaScript object, we have date object, we have this get time property, and the get time returns a number. So this is how the time is represented in a number. So because of that, we can subtract that from the a, and it's going to have the same. We're going to do the same here. We are just subtracting every date to each other so we can sort that. So we now have the messages from Firebase, but we need to store these messages in our state. So for doing that, we're going to create a new messages state, and it's going to have set messages, and we're going to use the use state hook, and the initial value is going to be an empty array. So that's how we do that. And where we could set our initial, well, we can do that. We can just set messages, and it's going to be our messages Firestore object. So we can do it in that way, and we are setting the messages. And now we are going to display those messages here. And for doing that, we are going to use the package that we installed. And this one is going to be this one. So we have the gifted chat from React Native gifted chat. So this is the library that we are going to use that has all the UI that we need to handle the messages. And we can display that here when we do have a user. So we can just use this as a component. This is actually a component. And here we have a bunch of properties that we can mess around, but the ones that we're going to use is the messages, and this is going to use our state. And we also need a user. So this is the user that we are creating here. This user that has an ID and a name and is already in our state. And that's what we need. And here we see this because we don't need to use this container style here. We are just going to display, and there we have that. But now we need to send those messages to Firestore. So for doing that, here we have an event that's called onSend, and this is what we need to do when we are going to send our message to the backend. So we are going to add another async function, and it's going to be on handle send. And this function, what's going to do is here we receive a messages array, and usually it's going to be only one message, but for other cases we can have more than one message. So we are going to treat this as an array of promises, of write promises. So we're going to say const writes, and this is going to be an array that has all the writes that we need to do. So we are going to read these messages parameter, and we are going to map that to an array of promises. So for each message, we are going to return a chats.ref.add. So this is going to create an array of promises that we're not writing right now. We are just only creating that array. And here we can just say await promise that all, and we are going to store those messages. And here notice that we are using the chats ref that we declared here. So this is how we add data to Firestore. It's really simple. We only need to have this method and pass the data, and this is going to create it's going to attach the data to the database. Here we have an error, and it's because we don't are passing this. So this is going handle send. So now if we type here and we click here, we should see the data here. And this is working because we are sending the data here, and here we have a listener that's going to listen to this change, and after that is going to set the state, the set message state, and here we are reading from that state, and that's why we see this here. But there's a problem, and that's what I wanted to mention, is that because if I type this again, I can type hello, the other message is not being shown, and that's because we're just listening to the added type of dog changes, and here we are overriding the messages only with the current one. So that's what's happening here, and we need to handle this in a different way. So for doing that, we are going to use another hook that's called use callback. And what this hook is going to do is going to help us because we don't want to render all the individual messages when we have another message. So this is going to help us to memorize the state, and so we catch the previous state and we add the new state. So we are going to declare a new method function that's going to be called append messages, and this is going to use that callback hook. This callback receives a messages array, and here we are going to set the messages with the same hook that we use here, but here we are using it in a different way, so we can have this as a callback, and this callback will have the previous state, in this case the previous messages. And what we are going to do is we are going to use this gifted chat append. So we have a method in our library that receives the current message and the new ones. So we are going to pass the previous message, and the current ones are these ones that we have here. And this is going to merge all the messages in one single array. One last thing is that we need to listen to some dependency list here. So what's going to be affected by this is only going to be for the messages state. So this is what the dependency that we need here. And here, instead of having this set message directly, here we're going to use our new method, and here we need to pass the messages. The messages are these ones. And now if we type, we should be able to see everything in order. So in order. So now there we have it. So one last thing is that in our use effect hook, we are declaring the unsubscribe method, but we are not invoking this method. So what we can do here is we can return, and the use effect method hook has this way of detaching from listener, is that we need to pass a function this, and this is going to invoke the unsubscribe method that we have here. So we are just detaching from that. And one problem here is that we have, you can see that we have this twice, is because I didn't specify this correctly. This does not need to be refresh state. This needs to be refresh reset. Yep, so this will reset the state every time we save. It will make sure to refresh the state. So we can test with a different phone. I'm going to add open a new, and you can see that here we don't have a user, so I can say another user. I can enter the chat. We can see the messages from the other user, and here I can say hi. And you can see that we can interchange messages between phones. So that's pretty much it, guys. So you can test this with different phones, or you can try to have different an authentication system and have different users. But that's basically how you can do it to listen to Firestore real-time data. Hope you enjoy this video. And if you like, please like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next time.